Good evening. Before Steve gets into the meat of the lesson tonight and to our report, I want to take a few moments just to, one, thank the elders for allowing me an opportunity on what would be my second trip to Guatemala to see the brethren down there, those that we support, and to just fellowship with like-minded Christians. Also want to go into a little bit of the main players of who all went. As you know, Steve and myself went. We were also accompanied by David Rafe, who, having lived there for many years prior, has a lot of knowledge in Guatemala, in the culture, the language, the dialect, and he was an enormous help in what Steve and I were there to do. My part in everything was to assist Steve as a translator of sorts. So, if not many of you are familiar, I do come from a Spanish background, so I can get around a conversation. So, outside of David and translating for Steve while Steve preaches, when David would preach, I would translate for the translator. So, that's kind of where I would be of some use to Steve. Outside of that, into conversations with our fellow brethren down there in Guatemala, and conversations, hearing about their lives, hearing about the stories that they have to share, their Christian, their backgrounds that led them to be baptized, come to Christ, and know all of these things were incredible to me. From somebody who has only been there twice, it's still an outsider experience going there. And I must say that it's very humbling to be there. There are many different aspects of life that we have, such the luxuries that we have that many parts of the world don't have. Our brethren down there, they lead very simple lives, and they love so much and give so much of what they do have. So I did want to share some thoughts on that, especially on the hospitality, meeting with brethren, on a day's notice, and having them just meet us and say, "Hey, you stay with us tonight," changing their whole sleep schedule around, rearranging things just so they can be hospitable to strangers. That to me is just incredibly encouraging. Just seeing how they live and seeing how much love they have for the Lord, and just being able to share. I can tell you that it seemed to be a common sort of theme that if they were sharing in what they had, whether it be food, lodging, anything like that, they were happy to do it, and they wanted it. It was a comfort to them to see that somebody could benefit from something that they had. And Steve and I must have gained, I think, 20 pounds on this trip. So, and just to see them work hard and just feed us, make sure we're well taken care of, and seeing the smile on their face when they probably didn't know that we may be watching, it is a real joy to see that sort of love. And when you hear the stories from the brethren and how that's just what they want to do. They're there to help. They're there to serve. That actually is a common phrase of theirs, that they're just happy to share in what they have and are there to serve us. So it was a very encouraging trip. I'm super appreciative of the ability to go take part in that experience once more. And if there's anything that of a takeaway, is that they are prime examples of how many people in the world should probably live their lives. They joyful and just caring and giving. And with that, we had a good trip from Tuesday up until last night. And we're thankful that we had a safe trip. We were able to meet those we did meet, and all around, it was just a wonderful experience. And with that, I'll turn it over to Steve so he can give the rest of the reports. But again, thank you so much.
I really appreciate Elliot's words that I think were spot on, and appreciate him for the tremendous amount of help he gives me on trips like this. I pretend like I speak Spanish, but I can barely, they laugh at me down there if I even try to say one word. So I really can't speak at all. So just to have him with me and help me in the ways that he's described is a great benefit. We were there a year ago Thanksgiving, a year and a half ago, so it would have been this last Thanksgiving. And since that time, a couple of big things have changed in that work that really compelled me to want to go back pretty quickly. David Rafe also expressed that same desire because of the changes that had occurred. One was that one of the men that we support, Luis Carlos, changed places from where he was in Pauline. He moved and then started working with a different congregation. So his whole life changed. They added another baby to their family. So lots of changes going on there, and we were interested in seeing how that was going and encouraging him. And then also we stopped supporting one of the men that we were supporting the last time we were there, and I'll talk about that in a little while. But we wanted to see him, see how things were going with him, and express our love for him. And we were able to do that as well. So those were the two main reasons we wanted to get back down there pretty quickly. And David Rafe became available, was going to take a trip here this next week anyway, so he added Elliot and I to his schedule, and we went a few days early so we could see to the things that we had desired to see. So for those who aren't familiar, Guatemala borders Mexico and Belize to the south. It's not really hard to get there. You can take a flight out of Atlanta. It's about a 3-hour flight, get you there pretty quickly. This is the country of Guatemala, as you see there. There's not really a lot, I think, to the north of it, except maybe jungle. I haven't been there. Most of the population and the places where we know are Christians is in the southern half. I might say that there must be a lot of churches of Christ. I don't know how many. Maybe somebody like Oscar or his dad, Basilio, would give us a better number, but there's quite a few numerically good churches in Guatemala. And we're supporting 3 guys down there right now from East Side, and we were able to see 2 of them on this trip, and would have seen the third, but he was busy having a Bible study and baptizing the guy into Christ on Friday, so he didn't come to see us. That's Hilmar. So we didn't get to see him for any time, but did spend some time with Luis Carlos and also Geronimo. When Paul was talking about going to see the Romans, he said, "I long to see you, that I may be encouraged together with you by the mutual faith, both of you and me." And buddy, that's the truth. I feel like, I don't know how much encouragement they get out of us being there, but I can tell you we get so much encouragement in our faith. And Elliot was trying to say this to us as well. It's just an amazing experience to see the kind of faith and love, commitment to truly living the life of a Christian that these people have. So it's just inspirational. It's humbling, all of that. And we hope in some way we encourage them in their faith as well. They certainly want every place we were. They wanted to express to you their greetings, their love for you, their appreciation for sending us, as it may be. So all of the love is expressed back to you that you might desire. So here's Los Les Hermanos, the 3 brothers together. That's obviously me and Elliot, and that's David Rafe, who Elliot's already described to you, kind of his value and the amazing help that he is, not only in knowing the culture, driving the car, everything. He's just makes this all so easy to do, which for a gringo like me would otherwise be quite difficult. So we had 5 really good days. Here's where we were. We landed in Guatemala City, where the big first star is there. Then spent some time that afternoon in Pauline. So the airplane landed at 12:30. We were preaching in Pauline at 3:30. So got our feet on the ground right away. Then we spent the night in Rio Bravo. From Rio Bravo, the next day we visited 2 other churches, one at Masagua and the other at Palalul. Those 3 churches are churches that Luis Carlos regularly works with, particularly the church at Palalul, which is the place where he has his membership and spends most of his time. So he's the young preacher that we're supporting down there, and we're just really excited to be able to do that, and you'll be able to see some of his family and the things that we did for a couple of days there. We also spent some time, a couple of days up in the area of Chicacao with Geronimo and his wife Julia. Geronimo does not necessarily work there all the time. He's acquainted with these brethren and wanted Elliot and I to spend some time in that area at the church at Chicacao. And we also spent some time Friday night with the church at Triunfal, I think is how you say it. So these are the places that we were sort of in the southern end of Guatemala. So our first Tuesday afternoon stop was at Palin. A year and a half ago, the church at Palin was meeting right downtown Palin, literally next to the bus stop, and had been there for many years. This is where Jose Maria worked for many years. You remember he passed away during COVID. Luis is his son-in-law and kind of took over some of his work. But they moved out into a residential area, which is probably going to be better in a lot of ways. You can actually hear the singing and the preaching that goes on instead of the buses constantly going back and forth. Of course, Jared was with us in 2015 and 16 when we visited the church in Palin and can testify as to the congestion that was in that area where the church met. But this is the new church building they're just erecting. It does not have electricity yet, which necessitated us meeting in the afternoon and getting done before sunset. Luis visits this church still once every month or two to keep connection and do some teaching. There are a couple of men there that are members of the church that are carrying on the work. Patricio and Juan Carlos are their names. That's Juan Carlos standing out there on the sidewalk with David and Luis to the left. So David and I were both able to preach this afternoon. It was not a time that the church regularly met, and there were those who had to be at work and various things, but those who could come got together with us. You see ladies and their children, and several men were able to come as well. Here's David, Luis, and Juan Carlos, Patricio, having a pretty good discussion about some spiritual things after our services were over Tuesday afternoon. Patricio gives several a ride home in his pickup. That if they can get there by bus or foot or however, then he'll load them in his truck and take them home. I think this goes on pretty regularly. And it's just, there's not, these people, they were waving at us, but they were not necessarily smiling because of the camera. They just smile all the time. And if we got a bunch of ours loaded up in a pickup truck to take them home after services, I'm not sure how many people would be smiling about that, really. But we're happy to be there, so encouraging in the service, and appreciative of just the chance to worship God with His people and to study His Word. So that night, we went on to Rio Bravo, where Luis lives with his wife, Lorna, and their 3 children. Of course, we have been with them before. They were not married. The first trip I was there in 2016, but now they're married with 3 kids. And as we said, Luis is continuing much of the work of his father-in-law, Jose Maria. This picture to the left there is kind of looking out the back of their house at the patio area. This is sort of a common setup for our houses in Guatemala. There's a dining area. Back in the back is where Sister Irma lives. That's Jose Maria's widow. This used to be her main house, but now Luis and Loida have taken over the front part of it. But anyway, this is kind of the patio area. The shower and everything is over to your right there. That's how almost all the houses that we were around are. There's a banana tree next door in the garden. Those are common sights in this area. So here's the breakfast time that next morning with Loida and Irma, with the children. That's David looking over the baby there, baby Esteban, one of my favorite Spanish names. It means Stephen, of course. And then Irma is holding Jose Maria, named after the grandfather. those are just nice times to be able to spend with the families, chatting about life, spiritual things sometimes, and just seeing how they live. One of the things that we were really happy to be able to do is to take down some Spanish study materials, booklets and things for Luis to use and for Luis and Loida to share with the brethren down there. These are all products of the work of Wayne Partain that Eastside supports out in Odessa, Texas. Tracy's going to tell you a little about him and his work at the end of this, so I won't spend a lot of time talking about Wayne Partain. But we took these books down there, and especially this one book I want you to notice, La Narrativa Biblica by Wayne Holt. Now, Wayne is also not a Spanish speaker, but his overview of the entire Bible, the Bible narrative, the narrative of the Bible, which is a condensation of Bob and Sandra Waldron's 17 Bible periods, all of that, condensed into 13 lessons. So you can cover the whole Bible instead of like we do in 4.5 years or whatever, 13 weeks, 13 Bible lessons, going through the whole overview of everything. So it's condensed down quite a bit, but will be very helpful. It's available in Spanish because of the work of Wayne Partain. So we took 30 of those books down, I believe, and then several other books on a number of topics like the home, the church, sound doctrine. The book that Wayne wrote is available as a Bible correspondence course here at Eastside. Some may not be aware of that, but if you go to our website, you can sign up for that as a Bible correspondence course. Also, it's going to be in print in English, I think, very soon, Wayne. Looks like that's in the works and will be in print in English, which I think will be a big boon for Bible study generally, probably across the country and across the world. But Luis is one of the first beneficiaries of all of that, and they were so happy to get these. They'd had a few copies of them earlier. Now they're going to spread these out to the young people there and have Bible studies with the young people using this overview of the Bible narrative. And we're so thankful that we can be a part of that. I mean, Luis is just beaming, as you can see there, to be able to get this material. So that day we went out to Masagua, which is a place Luis had worked with when he was in Pauline, kind of halfway between Pauline and Rio Bravo. David and I both were able to preach. The group, again, wasn't particularly a large gathering. It wasn't a normal time when they met, but much of the group was there to talk with us. One of the main leaders of this group is, again, that Luis has worked with quite a bit, but there's an older man by the name of Isabel. He's just a common laborer. He doesn't have good eyesight, but he has a great love for the Lord and a great desire to evangelize. And Isabel is responsible for bringing many of the members to Christ that are members in this fairly new church. I think it's just 2 or 3 years old that this group has been there, if I'm not mistaken. Hasn't been there long, but between Isabel and the work Luis has done, really a growing work. They're really focused on evangelism. We went over to Isabel's house afterwards, and the sisters put out a big spread of food. As you can see, Elliot's telling the truth. We gained some weight, I think, down there. So all kinds of good food to eat. And I want to show you this picture over to the left, the right. Oh, yeah, right. Over to the right. So the man to the far right there is a new convert. He's only been baptized very recently. He's Isabel's uncle, who just came to Christ within the last few weeks. Next to him is Luis Carlos, who's the brother that we support, the preacher. And then next to him is Isabel, just this man that's doing such amazing, amazing work, keeping this work going. So the way this works, I understand, is that a couple of guys from Pauline come down here on Sundays to do the preaching. Then Luis comes up during the week, I think once a week or so, to basically do evangelism, door-to-door type evangelism, or whoever they can talk to. Luis and Isabel work together doing that. And so again, there's a good bit going on in this little church regarding evangelism, and with some success, God is blessing it. So very happy to see all of that happening. Also, we spent that afternoon then with the group that Luis is primarily working with now. It's in Patalul, which is just up the road from where Luis lives in Rio Bravo. It's a typical small Guatemalan town. You get to the middle of it. You can get a taxi ride. In this case, we needed to. We left our car in the middle of town and got a taxi ride because the hills were too steep and the roads too narrow to take our vehicle on. So the taxis are these little three-wheeler tuk-tuks. And we loaded up in one of those and made it up the hill to the meeting place. You can see the picture on the left there, David and Luis standing outside of the church building. The tuk-tuk's down the hill there. You can see you have to walk up this pretty steep hill just to get to this building. But they're standing in what's, I guess, a road or a pathway there. And there's Elliot beside the tuk-tuk. This is a pretty good-sized church. Again, not meeting at a regular time for them, but lots of folks were there, and they had a couple of visitors from other congregations. Again, David and I both were able to preach. I talked about authority in that lesson. David talked about the faith of Abraham and offering Isaac. So we just do some basic teaching in these kinds of arrangements. And usually they're singing in a normal sort of service. And the brethren just participate very, very heartily. But this is where Luis works, and there are a couple of other leading men there that are really helping with the work. You can see in their attitudes, their dedication and love for the Lord. And I believe Luis is doing a super work there. That night, we got back to Rio Bravo and got to have a visit with Jose Humberto. Jose is the preacher that we were supporting. He had fallen into a sin about a year ago, and our elders felt it was necessary for us to withdraw our support from him. He repented of the sin, which is good. His reputation was somewhat marred by it, however. But he is striving to do his best to live a righteous life, help churches in the area still who will use him, and there are several that will. And we just wanted to show our love for him and encourage him to keeping on in his faith and his spirituality, and to encourage him in striving to serve the Lord. And we had a nice hour talk or so with Jose Humberto, encouraging one another in our faith. And we're happy to be able to spend that time with him. The next day, we were met there in Rio Bravo by Geronimo Koch and his wife Julia. We've supported Geronimo here at Eastside a long, long time. 40 years more, I suppose. He's just such a mature, influential, humble worker in the work in Guatemala. I believe he's likely respected all over the country, and people appreciate his wisdom, his knowledge, his, as I said, humility, his love for God's people. And we got to spend a couple of days. But we get up to Chicacao, and this is one of those incidents where here's a lady. Her name is Rosalinda. She's, if I could just describe her, and this is in no way disrespectful or even tongue-in-cheek, really. She is Dorcas and Lydia rolled into one. Just think of everything that's good that's said about Dorcas and Lydia, and that's her. I don't know that I've ever met a single person who's just so intent on serving the Lord, serving you, and encouraging his people. So she had expressed to Geronimo that, anytime he had preachers with him, bring them by her house. So he's bringing us by her house. And she just wants to take us in and feed us and take care of us and encourage us. So we spent 2 nights there, ate way too much food. This is her kitchen where she does the magic, but she does a lot of other good as well. I want to say some more about her in a minute. That afternoon, we went to where the church at Chicacao meets. I've been here before. Again, Jared was with me here some years ago, along with Will Ciota at the time. And we got to spend the time. And this, I think, was their regular meeting time at Chicacao this Thursday evening. We met at 4:30, if I remember. And the brethren invited me to preach, so I did. David translated for me. You see a pretty good size group assembled. Several mature families there, and a lot of good knowledge in that congregation. And we enjoyed our time with them. Some of these people I'd met before and remembered them. So that was an enjoyable time. But I want to tell you more about Rosalinda. On the top left there, the man that is sitting next to her is her 97-year-old father, who lives with her in that house, and whom she takes care of. He's quite infirm, but she takes care of him constantly. She also has a niece that's living in the house with her, along with various and other people that come and go and eat food at her table, seemingly all the time. She sews to make ends meet, and she has several projects doing that. I think sometimes probably just giving things to people, but earning a little money along with it. She has a husband who works, but he works in the capital city, so he's gone through the week. He was not there. His name is also Esteban, great Spanish name, but he's a Christian, but is not able to be there during the week. So she's doing all of this, mind you, on her own, with help from children now and neighbors, but there's a whole village, if you will, that's helping take care of us and take care of everybody else. But the hospitality and the love was just overwhelming. I mean, absolutely overwhelming. And the joy of these people to do these things. So while we're there, her sewing machine breaks apart, a major part, and we tried to find a replacement. Went around town for trying to find a replacement. Actually went to another town to try to find a replacement. No can do, And so she's distraught because this is her means of helping others and earning a little bit of money and all of that. And so here's where the Lord steps in. Here's where the Lord steps in. So before I went down there, several of you came up to me and just handed me money and said, take this to Guatemala or use it in Africa. And so I had money in my pocket to take to Guatemala, use it for something good. So I had funds from you all, from several of you, and I said, ask Geronimo, how much would it take to fix this or get her a new machine? And he said, well, you could get her a new machine you couldn't get her, and the new ones are plastic. You want to get the old one. That's actually better. Get a used old one. And he, gave us the price on that. So we had to force her. We twisted her arm 3 or 4 times, forced her to take the money, told her it was her birthday present and everything else. But seriously, what we said was, Rosalinda, there are people in America who love helping others, who have as much joy in helping others as you do. Please let them have joy in helping you. And with those words, she accepted the help. I said, please don't rob some people at Eastside of their joy. So thank you for sharing the love and sharing the joy as you do. It's where God steps in, because He loved us so much that we can love one another in this way. Thank you. The next day, we had a kind of a similar experience in a lot of ways. We really didn't have Friday planned. In fact, we didn't really have Thursday planned as far as that goes, but things just sort of worked out. There was a congregation in this area, Triunfo, just 15 miles down the road or so, where a family had been for a couple of generations Christians, teaching their children, raising their families, all in this area. Many of these people are of the Chial family, is the name of it. There are others, I think, that are connected to this. But anyway, it's a congregation of close to 100 people, as you can see, crowded into this building that's on some of the land that used to belong to Mama and Papa Chial, I think. back in the day. Just, this is not their regular meeting time. They said, hey, you got preachers in the area, have them come preach to us, and we'll put them up and we'll take care of them. And they did, and we did. They knew David Rafe, and they knew Geronimo, who kind of set this up. And so we get there, and it's just piled with people, and we're able to preach the gospel there and get to know these folks. The man on the left is Andres Chial, one of the several men there that does preaching. The center picture there is the little path you have to walk into to get to this church building. It's surrounded by other buildings and whatnot. It's kind of out in the country, but it's pretty crowded right in this area. So there I am preaching and David translating. So that was Friday evening, and we spent the night then with a quiet evening of eating and chatting with Andres and his family. You see there to the left, Andres' wife and daughter, I believe it is. I think that's who that is. Or maybe sister. The family all lives together, kind of there in a compound. But in any case, they're making chocolate out of cocoa. They're sitting there doing that, cocoa beans. And then you have Andres talking to Geronimo and Julia. And that's Andres' dad, Cruz, at the table. I'm not sure what they're talking about, but that kind of conversations go on all the time in these homes. Such a privilege to be able to go down, and thank you for sending me and Elliot, and thank you for supporting Luis and Geronimo and Hilmar in the country of Guatemala. I have a great wonder and amazement about our God, who can express His love in a way that all humanity can understand it and relate to it. The cultural differences, language differences that we experience in Guatemala, Colombia, Zimbabwe, Zambia, wherever I have traveled, the cultural differences are profound. It's sometimes I feel like we're not even the same race of people. I don't mean like a racial thing. I mean, we're not, we're another species or something, because some of our differences are so big culturally from place to place, from language to just everything. The way we do things, the way we live, what's important in our culture, what's not important in our culture, so different. And yet, the love of God translates into every culture on earth. And when Revelation tells us that God, the God of heaven, has opened up heaven to every tribe, nation, people, and tongue. That's the miracle of the gospel. We are a part of that. The gospel isn't American. The gospel is of God. And we are privileged to have received it here, as they are in Guatemala. And I guess as I close, I just want to impress upon you how powerful this expression of God's love is, that He sent His Son to die for you, and everybody in the world can understand that and relate to that. And that's why the gospel is to be taken to the whole world. And that's why it can save not only you and me, but any Guatemalan, anybody. It can save you tonight. And if you're in need of the gospel, if you need to correct something in your life, God's love is open for you. He's paid the price for your sins in His Son. And all you have to do is love Him back, have faith in Him, confess that faith, turn away from sin. Be baptized if you need to. If you've done that and you still have sin in your life, confess it, turn away. We'd ask you to come while we stand and while we sing.